top of mind for you as world leaders are gathering here at the UN this week? It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it underlines why it needs this World Parliament, the United Nations, more than ever. However, looking around the world, we are not only in shaky times, but this institution is under heavy pressure, politically and financially, and therefore we have to reform it. This is the biggest task for this upcoming year. And as well, and this is what I would like to underline as president of this General Assembly and the United Nations, that if we wouldn't have the United Nations, we would have to build it, because none of these global challenges you just mentioned could one country face alone or even solve alone. And this is why the theme of this session is better together.
What is your priority in terms of reform? What is the #1 reform that you intend to accomplish?
It has to be more efficient. It's a very big organization. It does incredible work, but all we are talking about is the failure of the Security Council, because as you mentioned, the war in Ukraine going on, because a permanent member of the Security Council can just put a veto. So many are asking, so if you're not delivering on peace and security, why does it still matter? But there are institutions like UNICEF, everybody knows, millions of children wouldn't go to school without the UN, UNICEF. 125 million people would have literally starved last year if the World Food Programme wouldn't have supported them. And imagine the COVID pandemic. Even the biggest countries like the US, a strong economy like my country, Germany, we could have not fought this virus alone, because COVID didn't have a passport. So you can only do it together with the help of the World Health Organization and vaccination going on. But people don't know about these great successes. So make clear that this is all the UN, and the money goes to the points where it actually delivers on the people. It's the biggest task, and this is why it needs this reform, but it needs also the political commitment of leaders. It needs obviously the funding of member states, and currently, especially the host country is questioning this.
What can you tell us about funding and where you are and how much it's difficult? And what more could you use? And what do you need?
Well, every country should pay their obligation, and the United States has been one of the biggest donors. I'm also always underlining this. Germany has for a long time been the second biggest donors, but it's in the self-interest of every country itself. Because if we would not have these kind of organization, imagine also like terrorism, how would we fight it together? But at the moment, there have been the announcement by the American administration that they might stop everything. So we are in the depths of discussion, like peacekeeping. If we want to keep peacekeeping going on, then we need also the funding from the US side.
How do you look at the US right now as a partner, if you indeed do look at the US as a partner right now?
Well, as a transatlantic, not only friend, but like my country owes to the American people, not only that we could recover after the Second World War, the biggest horror my country did around the world. Actually, also the reason why this United Nations was founded, and this is why Germany is so committed. But also lately, reunification, that East and Western Germany came together again. And these countries are all together in NATO. So it's the understanding of one for all and all for one, and this is why I think the transatlantic bond has to be stronger than ever before. But obviously there are also at these kind of times different views on different topics, and this is why the United Nations comes into play. This is a place where you talk about also disagreements.
Well, but on that, and I want to kind of pursue the U.S. role. I mean, what would you ask of the United States now? Because, there is certainly pushback, and we've got a president who at times has said we've done a lot as a nation. What more, though, and how important is it for the U.S. to continue to take a leadership role? We've talked a lot about the importance of soft power, too, globally. But how important is it that the U.S. take a leadership role here when it comes to the UN?
It's one of the biggest countries in the world. It has strong economic interest, like many countries in the world. And we saw already, not only with COVID when global trade stopped, we saw it also when the Houthis attacked ships in the Red Sea, what it would mean for global trade. We saw it when one cargo ship was turned in the channel a couple of years ago. So the effects also for one of the biggest economic powers like the US, without a world of free trade and rules which are based on the UN Charter on every country having the same rights, would be horrible. I mean, it attaches employment, it attaches economic growth, and maybe one of the recent topics, artificial intelligence. The whole competence lies in this country here, in some other countries around the world. So the whole setup for artificial intelligence, and there's a high interest also from the US administration. This will take place on Thursday, actually, at this high-level week you mentioned, when all the tech companies are coming together with governments to say, okay, this is a new potential for the whole world, but it obviously also needs regulation, like if we look at deep fake and the dangers for the use.
How does the role of the United Nations change in a world where countries increasingly are looking inward? And I speak about the United States, for example, in the America First mentality and the America First agenda of this administration. How do you convince this administration that the UN is worth it?
Good diplomacy, in my point of view, is not about convincing. And it's not like just speaking with the people who have the same opinion anyhow, then you can just speak to the mirror, actually. But it's actually taking the people from where they are and try to understand why are they arguing that way. And if I've understood correctly, this administration, this president is very keen about bringing peace to the world. So I invited all heads of states to think about this much better together. How can we bring peace to this divided world? You need partners. And many partners are smaller countries, so you need majorities. And coming together and ask themselves, so what could I do for the United Nations so the United Nations would deliver also for me, especially with regard to peace, support the United Nations peace plans around the world. You can only do together if you're also engaging with smaller and other countries around the world. And the president has announced that he will come on Tuesday, that he will speak on Tuesday. And I think this is really the place to be for world leaders at this United Nations.
We're talking with Annalena Baerbock. She is 80th UN General Assembly President, German Foreign Minister, joining us here in studio. You know, we know the division that exists geopolitically. We see it every day. You've been a very strong voice on things like climate diplomacy, human rights. When we have such division when it comes to trade wars and business wars and tech wars and just plain out wars, how do we move forward on things like climate and climate change, which I feel like it's safe to say we are all seeing it every day in terms of its impact. Human rights violations, which I think now is becoming a discussion here once again in the United States in terms of human rights or free speech. So I'm just curious, how do you tackle those and have smart discussions with world leaders about that against the broader backdrop that's troubled?
Maybe starting with the climate crisis. Anyhow, I always say, if you're not staying positive, you should not be in international politics. Then you choose the wrong job. But for the climate crisis, for example, I've been at the climate conference in Paris 10 years ago, and this was after failure of climate conferences worldwide, and people said we should just stop. And then 10 years ago, the world agreed, well, obviously climate crisis is happening and it's really touching us. But they didn't dare to say phase out of fossil fuels. They didn't dare to say renewable energy. They just said we had a problem. And now in 2025, or actually last year, when the world came together at the climate conference, they said the future is renewable. So it was only 10 years time and was kind of a resolution. So you could dislike that, say, I don't like renewable energy, but I mean, the power goes where the money goes. And the big industry around the world, they have invested into renewable energy. If we want to get into the market around the world, like on the African continent, where still millions are not being electrified, this is only possible through renewable energy. So I think there's so much investment having spent in the renewable sector that there's no drawback, not even if by a political decision, because this would be all stranded investments, companies invested into these new trends. So in this regard, kind of the economy has taken over. It doesn't mean that we still have also other ways, obviously, to go. But if already the Gulf countries, I mean, the oil-producing countries are saying we are standing on a second leg, and this is renewable, then obviously the world has changed in this regard. And I mean, you've seen it here in your own country. No money in the world can protect anybody against the climate effects. When in California, like the richest neighborhoods were burning, it didn't help that you have money. You can only help together if you do climate protection measures and protection and development around the world.
So world leaders, you are continuing to have the conversation. Companies are continuing to spend, and you're seeing a movement continuing to move forward when it comes to renewable energy.
Yeah, these are two trends, but obviously this is our world of capitalism. The logic goes where the money goes, and if you just see at the numbers of the last years, where the investments, the big investments went, there's a clear trend, and this clear trend is phasing out of fossil. Not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, but in the next decades.
The president of the United States has made his disdain for renewables, specifically wind and solar, well known. He doesn't like windmills. He likes fossil fuels and oil, and he likes also nuclear power. But we know there are challenges with nuclear power. In your view, is the U.S. going to be left behind if we don't invest in renewables?
Well, my role is not to commenting on national politics. However, I've been to Texas, actually, as a foreign minister, obviously also very strong on fossils. But they showed me there, especially all the wind parks, and they showed me how you make ammonia carbon neutral, because this is the source for the future with global technology. So I would say that also in these countries, there are like parallel trends going on, and which trends prevails. This is a decision of every national state. But if you see the trend worldwide, if you see it in China, if you see it in Europe, but if you see it in Africa, where the population of the future is living, it's crystal clear where the future economy will go.
I just want to ask a big picture question. Carol went through this list of the challenging environment that we're in. Russia's war with Ukraine, now 3.5 years old. Israel and Hamas coming up on its second year anniversary. The challenges between China and Taiwan. You said you want to make the UN more efficient. But what would you say to a critic that says it hasn't been effective in the last few years?
You're right, not effective enough. But I always turn the question around. Would any country in the world be better off without the United Nations? Because the logic of those who argue, well, it didn't deliver on the good, would be stop doing the right thing, but then evil would prevail. Would any truck of humanitarian aid would enter Gaza if we say UN doesn't work anymore? Would the war in Ukraine would stop if we wouldn't have peace negotiations going on? Not at all. So we have to try harder. This is our job. And we know from history that the most important thing is to keep up hope. And hope is not the conviction that everything will go right, but hope is a conviction that you do the right thing. And diplomacy is about doing 300 days or sometimes even 3,000 days. If you look back in history again, Second World War, it lasted for years and years and years. And then afterwards, we built the United Nations. So it's about not giving up, trying even harder. And always remember, what would you like to do, your neighbor would do. This is what I asked as a European when there was the full invasion of Russia in Ukraine. Imagine that this was only 8 hours drive away from Berlin capital. Would I not want my neighbors helping me out when we would have been invaded?
Well, having said that, as a European, do Europeans, feel like the United States has abandoned it? And an important ally and group, if you will.
Well, you bring me in difficult situation here on screen, because I switched my job. No. And I'm speaking now for 193 member states, but obviously I do have also a national identity. But I mean, this is also democracy. Government change and therefore policy change. But I'm a believer, as I said, not only an optimist, but a believer that deep inside, when everybody asks themselves, so what do I wish for my own children? What do I wish for my family is like to have clean water and food, to live in peace and security, to go to school, and to wish that my friends are helping me out. And especially between Europe and the US, I mean, this has been the deepest friendship over the last decades. So the motto we had all together, all for one and one for all, I think this is what held us really also the freedom in our different countries. And I believe that the majorities on both sides of the Atlantic sees it still the same way.